I'm just going to complete a short video on the new multi-screen display unit that comes with the Numark NS7III. Going through a few bits about it. Here goes. Sorry about the sunlight, but I'm not going to complain on a lovely day like this. So let's get down to a few specs. As I said, it's very lightweight in feel. So, lightweight. Let's see how much it weighs. And before you say, oh, he's weighing it on a soft surface, it should be on a hard surface. I weighed this before on a hard surface and a soft surface, and I have the same result. Make sure it clears all the sofa, which it is, and it weighs in at 784 grams. So that's under a kilo, obviously. So now you know it is light. Yep, there I am doing it again. I've been a little harsh about this, about the build quality of this display unit, calling it plasticky and a bit cheap. But in contrast to the rugged, no-nonsense build quality of the controller, let's face it, it is very plasticky. It's not flimsy, but when I set this, mounted it in the brackets, I noticed both ends, that end and this end, they were sitting snug on the controller, and in the center it was raised. Now looking at it, I realized it has a slight bow to it. Now that's not good, because this is brand new, and as far as I'm concerned, it's imperfect. It should have been made out of a far more rigid quality plastic, considering how much all of this costs. And I would have thought Numark would have settled for nothing less in quality. Let's have a look. This is what I noticed. I don't know if you can see it. Sorry with the sunlight, but there's a bow to that. That's brand new. A better quality plastic that would have been rigid, straight. Over a while, how long will this fare? Will it bow even more? I suppose it's all to do with the overhang there and there in the size that it is. Sorry about the quality of this video with the sunlight, but I'm not going to complain about the lovely day that it is. So, as I said, getting this on and off the controller, over time it's just going to bow even more. And talking about getting this on and off the controller, let me just try and zoom into something. I don't know if you can see that properly. I'm not too sure what those grooves in there, if you can see that. When I slid this on the brackets on the Mark III, quite a lot of plastic came off when I took it off again. Now just imagine if you're gigging, you're putting this on, taking it off, putting it on, taking it off. How much more plastic are you going to lose out of those grooves? Will it be sloppy after a while in there? Will it just come off? I think Numark, what they should have done, I've actually taken the brackets off. Very lightweight. These are, get that in focus. I think the edges of that should have been more rounded off. Quite a sharp edge there. Should have been chamfered off or maybe rounded off somehow, so when it fits inside there when it's mounted, it doesn't take so much of the plastic off, because that concerns me how much plastic it will take off. Maybe if it wasn't so snug to grip it, what I think Numark should have done was maybe made that thinner, that bracket thinner, so that the display unit just slid on, and maybe had a couple of locking screws. These, if I zoom out, these are the locking screws that hold, get that in the sun could be even better. These are the locking screws that hold the metal clamps in place on the underside of the Mark III. Now, if those were placed maybe somewhere on the back of the display unit, you could nip the display unit in place on the brackets or on a slimmer bracket. Then you wouldn't be concerned about the plastic rubbing off each time you take this on and off, because obviously you'll be taking this display unit on and off to get it inside your flight case, gigging and what have you. Although these brackets look very thick, they are quite thick. They look thinner in this video, but they're quite thick. They're very light, so they haven't added much weight to the controller. There's the other one. And the 4 screws. They honestly look quite bulky, but when you, here I go back to the scales. I don't know if you can see that properly because of the sunlight, it's terrible. There we go. God, I can't even see that properly. There you go. Weighing it all, look, that's 260 grams. That's quite light, all of that. It's quite deceiving when you see them, you think they're very heavy, but they're quite light. So, you know, they're quite heavy and no nonsense compared to the quality of the display unit. So as I said, you know, I don't know if you will lose much plastic or much more plastic if those edges weren't chamfered some way, or maybe a different construction, or maybe in these slots if they had a thin spring-loaded metal, so you slid metal against metal rather than metal against plastic, because the plastic's going to give. And how long before you lose too much plastic in these gaps? And as I said, that is going to be a bit sloppy. Well, that's that on the quality. But as I said, it could have been improved. And as you can see, I'll just run through these connections. That one on the right, the orange one, goes, as it says, to your PC. That one, I think they mention, takes a thumb drive. Maybe when you connect it in, you'll see more tracks on the thumb drive. That goes straight into your NS7 Mark III. Or if this is the retrofit screens, goes into your 2. There's your power jack. You are supplied with, zoom out, that power jack there, that goes in the back. Why not do it there? It's better. That goes in the back there, and the other end goes into the back of the controller. And that clip there, I think it just accommodates the cables that run along the back to keep them nice and tidy. Yeah, just a bit like a cable tidy. And obviously you have your power button there, which, yeah, what I find funny is the use of these cap head screws. They're quite heavy. You could have done with a smaller screw there, but obviously, as I said, I suppose me grumbling and going on about the quality of this, if Numark were to make something of a far superior quality, maybe the tooling for manufacture would have cost a lot more. So no doubt they have to keep costs down. And maybe I am going on a bit too much about this because it's only a display. Just a display. It's just that, as I said, in contrast to the quality of the controller, you notice this doesn't match. And just to explain as well, on the top of these screens there's a fine film you take off, you peel off, just so you can see the vivid display. This is just a protective thing across there. Right, so I'll move on now. The controller comes supplied with two USB cables. The shorter cable goes from the controller to the display unit, and the longer cable from the display unit to your laptop. I've had quite a few questions about connectivity from the display unit to the controller. There it is on page 3 of the quick start guide supplied with the NS7III. You can see where the cables go. Hope that's quite clear. Best thing to do is to pause this, and that should answer all your questions. Here goes, and I do believe the Numark guy said on the stand at the NAMM show, drum roll, stackable waveforms. Here goes. Drum roll. There they are. Lovely. I'm impressed. When you see all of this going on, it makes you forget about the quality of the display unit. I'm not going to go through much more, but there you go. Your needle point spinning around there. What happens if I change this view button? I don't know. Oh, there you go. If I press it again, back to the... Okay. Same, I take it on the other one. I'm not too sure what that track is, so don't judge me on my choice of music. I like a variety of music, so that's just one song I have. I've already loaded up a few songs, but there you go. Are you impressed? I am. Just going to take this opportunity now to mess around with a few controls and see what happens on each screen. Going to move the pitch up and down now, so you can see that plus 0.4, plus 5.8, that moving. Try another button. Focus a bit better. Try the, see how I used one of the effects there. See that responding? That is actually excellent. There's no delay in the movement of that dial. There's no delay. It's, see that? Excellent. Try another one. Excellent. Very responsive. I like that very much. I just press auto roll and I just press one of the pads. They are excellent. As soon as you press them, they light up. There's no delay. I'm very impressed. Very good. Right, just to clear something up about this USB in socket at the back of this display unit. I placed a USB thumb drive in the back there with tracks on it, and they all came listed in the center display screen. Yeah, so once I put the thumb drive in the back, all the tracks on that thumb drive came listed down there in the center display screen, and they were available to be selected and loaded directly onto the controller. So no need to put that thumb drive in the laptop anymore. Just put it directly in the back of the display and load them up onto the controller. Nighttime test. Very impressive. I like how the white wheel in the center, the bright light from it bleeding into the right screen and the left screen. These are the screens you get when you just plug the display unit into the controller and it's not plugged into the PC yet. Now I'm going to do a test to see what the detail is like on the screens at extreme viewing angles. Here goes. I'm impressed, that's good. Excellent. Right, nighttime display test again, and also another test. I closed the laptop while everything was running, just as it is now. I completely closed the laptop till it was shut, running Serato, and everything went into a sort of crash. The screens on the controller went back to the Numark logo. The meters in the center, they stopped or like paused, but the platters were still running. When I opened the laptop up again, put my password in, Serato burst back into life and the controller burst back into life. But not all of the screens on the controller burst back into life, so I pulled the USB out, put it back in again, and all the screens burst back into life and everything was running again. Not something I recommend doing, but I just wanted to see what happened if you shut the laptop. I thought it might have carried on running, but no, it goes into a crash in this case anyway. So Just going to see what the screens look like at extreme viewing angles. Still very clear. Everything's still very bright. Lots of detail. Excellent. Very good. Conclusion. Top marks Numark for creating and building this multi-screen display module. Now the DJ's focus of attention is where it should be, down on the controller and not above or to the side on a laptop. This is the way forward. What's next from Numark? Something similar on their next flagship model with Serato installed? Or the next flagship model with multi-integrated screens and Serato installed? I'd love to see that. That would be perfect. I hope this video has been informative and I've answered most or all of the questions you would have had to ask. Again, thank you so much for watching. Not quite finished yet. I just thought I'd take this moment to show you what this looks like lit up during the daytime. Very impressive. I hope I've covered all the questions you would have had to ask about connectivity and just what you do get from the screens. Or if not, I hope I've covered most of the questions you would have had. I hope you've enjoyed this short review, and I'd just like to say thank you so much for watching.